You're scrolling through your phone. A goal video shows up. Not the best goal of the season. Not the most dramatic moment of the match. Just a celebration. Arms spread wide, a shout, a familiar spin. And underneath, thousands of comments are already waiting. Not to talk about the pass, not to talk about the finish, just to hate. Have you ever wondered why? The obvious answer is that people hate him because he's arrogant. But the real answer is far stranger, because the thing being hated, it turns out, isn't on the field. It's inside the viewer's own brain. Forget Cristiano Ronaldo for a moment. Forget football entirely. The far more interesting thing isn't the man being hated. It's the psychological mechanism inside the people doing the hating. Because it turns out, this isn't a random emotion. It's a chain reaction that can be named, measured, and remarkably, it repeats itself identically in millions of people who have never met. Start with the most obvious part. The anger. When you see someone celebrating a victory ostentatiously, your brain doesn't process it as a neutral event. It processes it as a social threat. Psychologist Leon Festinger, back in 1954, proposed a simple but haunting theory. People constantly compare themselves to others to judge their own worth. He called it social comparison theory. The problem is, when the person you're comparing yourself to stands too high, richer better, more confident, your brain doesn't always respond with admiration. Sometimes it responds with irritation. That's why a celebration like that can leave a viewer irrationally annoyed. It doesn't insult anyone, but it exposes a gap, and the brain, which hates feeling positioned lower, reaches for the fastest available response. Slap a bad label on the moment. Arrogant, ridiculous, performative. But anger is only the first step. What comes next is where it gets genuinely interesting. Once your brain has decided someone is hateable, it stops evaluating information fairly. Psychologist Peter Wason, in a famous series of experiments in 1960, found that people tend to seek out only evidence confirming what they already believe, while ignoring anything that contradicts it. He called it confirmation bias. Apply that to a footballer, and a familiar pattern emerges. One missed penalty gets remembered for years. One moment of complaining to a referee gets turned into a permanent meme. But hundreds of goals, dozens of records, millions of dollars given to charity, all of it slides by as if it never happened. Not because it isn't real, but because the brain already decided which story it wants to tell and only keeps the pieces that fit. Does this sound familiar to you? Not just in football, at work, in relationships, in politics. Once you've decided who someone is, you stop actually looking at them. You only see evidence for the decision you already made, and this is where things get stranger still. Hating alone is exhausting. Hating alongside a crowd feels much better. In 1951, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a simple experiment. He showed participants a clearly marked line, then asked them to match it against other lines. The correct answer was nearly impossible to get wrong. But when the people around them, actually actors planted in the experiment, deliberately chose the wrong answer, a third of participants went along with the wrong answer too. Not because they couldn't see the truth, but because standing alone against a crowd felt more dangerous than being wrong together. That's exactly what's happening under every controversial post. A sarcastic comment appears. It gets a few hundred likes. And suddenly, dropping a mocking emoji isn't a personal choice anymore. It's a ticket to belonging. You don't have to actually hate. You just have to want to feel like you're not alone. Then there's another layer, more subtle still. The obsessive comparison. No post about a standout star can exist peacefully without being dragged into a comparison. There's always an opposite archetype set up. more humble, calmer, less flashy, used as a moral standard to measure the other one against. This isn't a coincidence. It's a way the brain simplifies the world, turning one complicated human being into two easy extremes. So you don't have to think too hard. Just pick a side. The problem is no one, no matter how talented, can survive being placed under a constant comparison, weighed on a scale every day, every post, every celebration. And here's the most counterintuitive part of the whole story. The deeper you look into research on social comparison, one thing becomes clear. Intense hatred rarely targets weakness. It almost always targets perfection. 2 decades of unbroken training discipline. A body kept at its peak when age should have spoken up long ago. A mindset that refuses to accept defeat, even after every possible title has already been won. That perfection, unconsciously, acts like a mirror. And not everyone likes what they see in that mirror, not because the reflection is wrong, but because it's a reminder of the gap between where they stand and where they wish they could stand. Hatred, in this case, becomes a form of self-defense, far easier than confronting the question, why have I never managed that kind of discipline myself? So the record-breaking hatred aimed at a sports star was never really about the star. It's about what the crowd needs to feel okay about itself. A simpler story, a mocking nickname to shrink an achievement down, a group to belong to, an opposite archetype to stand on the moral side of. People in the end tend to prefer watching a monument fall more than they enjoy continuing to watch it stand.